So this is. Oh, I have to show them. All right, Patrick, if you hear me at some point, turn your camera on so I can be sure you hear me. Okay,
Hello.
talk
Can
to
you
us.
hear me?
Can you say something else?
Hello, hello.
Awesome, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Patrick, you can hear us, right?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you guys.
Not without the mic. You can only hear what's on the mic. Or what I'm saying in the background.
Yeah, I can hear some of the background when you were just talking right there.
Yeah. Hello, Patrick.
Is that Colton?
Do you remember me?
Of course I remember you. Hello.
Okay.
Do
Do
you
you
remember
still use
me?
fountain pens?
I still have the same one from when I was there, yeah.
Okay. Is it a Lamy?
Oh, no, I was using Lama's back. No, I have I forget which one I have now. I have a suction cupped. I think it's a platinum
It's a
is what I
what?
have. I think I have a platinum now.
Oh, what's that?
Um I don't write too much nowadays, so I need something that keeps the ink wet. So the cap has a vacuum on it.
Oh.
Yeah. Let me know if I need to adjust my mic volume at all
Oh, you
as
might
well.
need to. Yeah. I wasn't sure
Higher?
if it was just
Lower?
too loud out there still. More? More?
I was gonna say,
All right, is
hey
this more? Is
Patrick,
this higher? Hello.
it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
It's funny because we all look this way. He sees the side of our
Yeah.
face.
I'm looking. Does it
Hello.
work if I look this way? If I don't know what orientation I am on the
5
screen.
years, you look exactly the same.
I think that's a good thing. Um I don't know. Yeah.
I always call that security camera view, right? Like when people have their camera over here,
Oh, yeah,
but they're like computers here and they're on the Zoom call and their camera's here, but they're like looking at this monitor. I'm like, I feel like I'm watching you from a security camera.
I never understood
Yeah.
why people did that.
Are you guys muted, Colton? Hello.
Hey, Glenn, how are you?
Doing well. Now that I found all the links.
We can't hear you.
I can hear you, but I think the mic volume is really low.
Hi, Glenn. Can you hear us?
I can, yes.
Okay, so we can't hear you. So give me just a second. Oh. All right. Try to talk to us again.
Test 1, 2, 3.
So it's very low. Can you turn your volume up at all?
Maybe.
Can you speak again? You can keep talking to
Test
me if
1,
you
2,
have.
3. Is that any better?
Okay. Keep
Test.
talking to me a little bit louder.
Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so I'm catching audio, but I don't think I'm picking it up. Just give me a second to.
I can
Patrick,
hear
can you hear Glenn?
Yeah, I can hear Glenn, and the
So
volume
you can
did
hear
go up.
Glenn.
Yeah.
So speak to me again, Glenn.
I'm speaking to you again.
I can hear you now. You might have to speak a little louder, but the room will be less rowdy in a bit. So I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay.
Glenn and Patrick, we'll get started in a few minutes. Just want to give Rachel a second to join.
Are those blue switches?
Rachel, can you chat just so we can make sure we can hear you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hey, Rachel.
Hey, Glenn, how are you?
As busy as you are.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. Is this on? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our panel for the computer science alumni. My name is Matt Garega. I'm the class of 2002, computer science graduate, communication arts minor. I'll be moderating our discussion on the panel today. We have Colton, Glenn, and Rachel, or I'm sorry, Glenn, Rachel, and Patrick, and I'll give them a quick chance to introduce themselves, and then I'll kind of just jump into questions. If we'll leave a little bit of time at the end for question and answer from the group. So if you have any questions, please kind of hold that to the end. So in light of our, well, she just left. I was going to let Rachel go first and her video left. So Rachel, you can go. Why don't you go first and start off with a quick introduction?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Rachel Harris. I'm computer science major class of 2023. Right after graduating, or I guess I should say while I was still at Allegheny, I left early to pursue the 3-2 program with Carnegie Mellon. There I studied information security policy and management, and now I'm a senior analyst at Goldman Sachs.
Thanks, Rachel. Glenn?
My name is Glenn Buckholz. I'm class of 1998. And that number is a lot further back than I would like to admit normally. I'm a principal solution architect at Amazon Web Services. And yeah. Go from there.
Thanks, Glenn. Patrick?
Yeah, my name is Patrick. I double majored in computer science and economics, class of 2019. Right out of school, I started as an analyst in econ consulting, and then after a couple of years there, I left to work at Daniel Wagner Associates, which is, they work primarily with the government for kind of like a defense-related context and stuff with a couple of other Allegheny alums.
Thanks, Patrick. And Colton?
Yeah, my name is Colton. I'm excited that I get my own mic this year and I don't have to like pass one back and forth. I graduated in 2017, computer science major. Then I went and worked at a startup called StockX, and now I'm at Fastly for the last about 5 years.
Thanks, Colton. So I do have a list of questions I sent to the panel earlier. I wanted, in full disclosure, every one of these questions and the format, even the formatting of the document, for those of you who got the document, I literally went to ChatGPT. I asked it to give me a list of questions, and this was the text was, give me a list of questions for computer science alumni speaking to, or in a panel for students with careers in technology. That was the prompt, right? Within about 30 seconds, I got 2 pages worth of really good questions that I read through, and I'm like, I can't do any better than this, so that's what we're getting. So if you want to ask what AI will continue to do for the industry, even just that is an example of some of the things that are coming out. So with that in mind, I'll start to direct questions, but if you want to jump in, feel free. And Glenn and Rachel and Patrick, we have a little monitor set up here so we can see you. So if you want to interject, please just, quick raise a hand or get my attention, and I'll call to bring through. So first question, which I think is an interesting one, is how did you transition from being a computer science student to your first job in tech? What helped you stand out?
So for me, it was internships. I interned with the company that I first worked with in the professional field, and that paved the way. It allowed us to both try before we bought, as the saying goes, and it introduced you slowly to the work culture as opposed to the school culture, which is a change, right? And so for me, it was internships. And by the way, major computer science, minor economics. Sorry, forgot to put that one in there.
Thanks, Glenn. Anybody else want to field anything on that one? Anything to
Yeah,
add?
my first job out of school was not in tech. It was in economics, but transitioning out of that into tech, honestly, the biggest impact was keeping in touch with my classmates and my colleagues at school. Um, I had been sort of, just speaking to them throughout, at that point, the pandemic, and we were just talking about work, and I let them know when I was looking for a position, and, they let me know when their firms were hiring, and the interviews that I did do, it was sort of mainly from knowing alumni, and I guess at that point, rather my classmates specifically, and where they were working.
Interestingly, mine was my comp sci senior thesis was what got me my first job. I didn't know it at the time, not until actually after I was hired, that the CTO of StockX had a side project that was related to testing, and my thesis was on testing. He's like, hey, I see the overlaps, like, we should talk about this. So you never know what your projects may lead to. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can round it out. I had a very similar experience to Glenn. I interned with Goldman before I took the full-time offer. That was last summer. And before I interned for Goldman, I had a few other internships and fellowships. The one thing that stuck out to me the most was that I interned at Prudential out in Newark, and I was a software engineer and data analytics intern for them. And that experience really showed me the difference between what it was like to be a student in computer science and what it was like to be a software engineer. And it was that experience that helped me understand that software engineer wasn't what I wanted to be when I graduated. And so I knew I had to pivot out of that almost immediately. So, yeah, after that internship, I continued to take more specialized classes at the 400 level. And from there, that's what really made me pursue the 3-2 program. And that's what helped me stand out when I started applying to information security and cybersecurity roles.
Rachel, you had that deer in the headlights look of, I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thinking about that, once you get into your first role, what key skills or knowledge did you feel were missing from your education once you entered the workforce?
Ooh, I have a good one for this. It wasn't necessarily skills or knowledge. I think I was prepared in that. I guess the way that I went into it was thinking that people had more of an idea of what they were doing than was the case in reality. I thought people had the answers and they were like keeping them from me. Like, the senior people must know that this is the answer to this problem, and really it's the skills that you're learning here of learning how to learn and approach problems. You just keep applying that skill as you mature over and over. It's just different problems or maybe similar looking problems. But yeah, the thing when I first went in was like, they have to know the answers. I should be able to just go to them. And sometimes they can help guide you on how to approach the problem. Maybe that's what you're missing, but yeah.
So for me, I quite literally sum it up as, it doesn't matter how smart you are if nobody's willing to listen to your answer. There's a lot that goes into that, but knowing how to be heard, and knowing how to work well with the people around you is something that gets a little bit glossed over, or it did in the mid 90s, when you were in college, and then moving into the workplace. That is something that I had to adjust to. And I spent a large part of my career honing both my skills and technically and socially how to work with people and make them understand me as in my position.
Thanks, Glenn. Rachel or Patrick?
Actually, I have something. Oh, Patrick, go ahead. Sorry, I see you're going to speak.
Yeah, I think something that I had to get used to pretty quickly. I got really used to and sort of comfortable in this sort of role as a student in terms of academics and studying and grades and sort of everything like that. Um, Something that I think was difficult and I wish I had gotten a little more experience with. Um, Unfortunately, I don't know how to do it in like that specific academic setting. Is that idea of like it doesn't have to be sort of like perfect. Like everything you do doesn't have to be exactly like there is no rubric. There's no sort of grade that you're getting, and to focus a lot more on um, like what people are telling you that they want and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I've had some similar experiences, and the transition most certainly is learning the difference between an assignment that you're handed in your class and an assignment that maybe your manager gives you. So the first piece of feedback that I ever got at my first corporate internship was to learn how to understand the business use case of what you're doing. So, not just doing something for the sake of completing it, but understanding why it's important to the company. And obviously, something that feels intuitive when you're working for a company, but some things just need to be reinforced, through that kind of feedback. So that was definitely the first thing that I learned when I left.
Yeah, kind of going back to Glenn's point on the social aspect of software engineering is two key things that have helped me a lot in the early parts of my career to this day is realizing that there's a chain of command above you, and if you can help those people with their tasks that they're working on, I think that always helps you in your role. So whether it's a principal engineer above you and then a director of engineering above them, helping them achieve their goals is not going to hurt you. But at the same time, the other thing I wanted to say was disagreeing and committing. So maybe you disagree with the chain of command. That doesn't mean that you have to shut up and not ever voice your opinion or something you're seeing, because maybe you're seeing something that they're not seeing. So you can always like voice that to them and give them another data point. But at the same time, you've got to like hold that pretty loosely of, hey, I see this, this is what I think. And they say, hey, don't worry about that. I think you need to trust that chain of command, especially if they've proven themselves, and be able to detach from your opinions there and trust them and go ahead and move on, or you're just going to get stuck in this, basically stuck in the mud, spinning your wheels.
Okay. One last one in this little area of sort of career path. How important is it to specialize in a particular area of technology early? Or is it better to focus on general skills? Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, I actually really like this question. So when I studied at Allegheny, I was a computer science major, but a political science and philosophy double minor. And so at the time, it was very interesting to make the case to other people why I was studying and passionate about all of those three things. But through that, I found it important to specialize in data ethics and data privacy. And that really came out to me when I took one of OBC's classes. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity. I also think when you're in your early education, it's incredibly important to be a sponge, to learn everything that you possibly can so that you know kind of the horizontal nature of what you're studying. So to learn both ends of what cybersecurity or even computer science really looks like. And then from there, I think it's important to find something that you're passionate about and to start developing those skills. I think that's one of the things that, back to the earlier question, one of the things that set me apart so early in my job search was being able to say that I was really passionate about data ethics and data privacy, and that was something that I wanted to pursue in my profession. And I was able to produce research. I was able to work on projects that really helped with that. So I think starting off in a more general way is good, but I also see the value in starting to specialize and develop strong skills as you enter into those later years of study.
Go ahead, Glenn.
So it's really a difficult question. And this is one of those where I don't think that there's a right answer. You have to find something that's going to engage you. And in the end, you need to do something meaningful with it. And if that is stringing together a bunch of the general skills really well, then great. And you'll learn to continue down the path. But if diving really deep on something is what keeps you there, go for it. And just be aware of what, be cognizant of what you're doing. Know that you're giving up some of the general skills in order to dive deep. It's always a trade off in time until you get that breadth of experience and lose hair like I have, right? And know how that's going to affect you going further. But it's whatever allows you to stick with it and, find a little bit of passion in what you're doing. And for some people, it's wide, and for some people, it's deep.
I always blame my kids for my gray hair. Janelle says she blames the students for her gray hair. Patrick, Colton, you gonna skip this one?
I mean, I could, yeah. Yeah, I don't have any more to add to it. I don't have any more to add.
Glenn, I'm not throwing softballs up here. We gotta have some hard questions. So what trends in the industry do you think students and new graduates should be paying attention to right now?
Who's gonna say it?
AI.
Who's gonna be the first one to say it?
Fine,
I mean,
AI.
I was gonna say I teed it up like 10 minutes ago.
Actually, I can speak on this because I kind of have an interesting story, slightly interesting. Because I was kind of against, like, I would say, I call myself an AI skeptic a little bit. Not that it's not going to have an impact, because it certainly will, but being in the industry, I was never the type of person that like used GitHub Copilot to write my code or anything like that. I was like, I don't need to use AI for anything. And then it wasn't until I think it was mid last year, we were using an open source piece of technology. It's called Envoy. It's a reverse proxy. It handles our API. And all these other teams that were behind what my team serves, behind the API, one of those individuals on that team was seeing bugs that were resulting from my team's thing. And that person has no idea, had never used the technology that we were using, but they knew how to use AI well enough and craft their prompt well enough with the question that they were able to debug pieces pretty deep in our configuration of the tool without understanding the tool at all. And with that, I'm just like, being able to use the tools effectively, I think, is the key there. And from that point on, I was less of an AI skeptic, and I started using it and being able to craft prompts and stuff. But yeah, I would say mostly just leverage the tools that you have available to you. But don't be boxed in by the tools that you have. Like, don't rely on them too much. You have to be able to think outside of them.
So, I have some experience with AI, and I too am in the AI skeptic category, but not because I don't think that it's a valid technology or path that we should pursue. I think you have to actually understand what it does, right? And that's what you were saying. People ascribe more intelligence to it than it actually has, and that's where you get into problems. That said, I look at it personally like a higher level language in which you can use to do your work. but you have to know what it is and isn't optimized for, right? There's a reason sometimes you use JavaScript, and there's a reason sometimes you use C. I would not write a kernel in JavaScript, but I would in C or Rust these days, right?
Rachel or Patrick?
Yeah. I was like sort of called hesitant to sort of adopt the tools into my sort of just work. One of my coworkers has been sort of like very, very passionate about this and keeps up on everything. And he sort of introduced me to just like how we could make things a little easier. And the way that the two of us have approached it is um, like mostly it saves me time going to Google, knowing stuff that I can find everything that it sort of knows, like just because you know how to like use the internet, but it saves time. And honestly, I think that's probably the most that we use it for, at least in my experience. Anytime I try to go super deep in any sort of particular specifics, it just starts like, it's not made for that. So I think when I started using it in the way that he was, I started to understand a little bit just in terms of the speed savings. I would say is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I kind of want to build on that because you triggered something in my mind, which is a few years ago, like when I was in college, Google felt like you could find the answer on the first page. And I think maybe it's because we're at a point where there's so much data that, or Google's changing their algorithms, where the first page Google search, I'm now going to like second or third page, which is where it's like, okay, now the AI models are effectively that first page for me. It's not the solution. Like it's the same as when I was in college back in my day, whatever, like however many years ago.
Get off your lawn.
Yeah. You still wouldn't go to Google first page and take that answer and put it right in. So yeah, it's another tool. Yeah.
So interesting trivia. The reason why there is an actual reason why stuff isn't on the front page, and it's because it falls in the category of this is why we can't have nice things. Since search results have been monetized, people have spent billions of dollars to figure out how to put whatever they want on the front page. And they've reverse engineered. They constantly try to reverse engineer what Google is doing. And so it's a cat and a mouse game to put things that are relevant up at the top. And part of the reason why stuff falls onto the second page is because people are fighting for the first page, but they're not really paying attention after the second page. Traditionally, that's when people's interest fell off because Google was so accurate. And now it's like an industry standard. It'll be on the second page. Don't worry about it. You just scroll past the advertisements for shampoo and conditioner. You'll be good, right?
Rachel, anything to add from the data security perspective?
Yes, that's definitely the lens I can add to it. So I appreciate the more technical side here, but I think to go a little broader than the question is to always, anytime that you're encountering or working with a new technology or an innovative technology, is to always address it from a risk-based approach, right? So as much as you can, ask yourself the question of, if what I'm doing today has an impact tomorrow, what does that mean for me? Try to think more broadly than the immediate use case if you can. It's sometimes very, very challenging. But I think that goes back to the initial conversations we were having about being skeptical when things first come out. It's to think about all endpoints, as it were. Think about all challenges. Yeah, I think it's really important when you're addressing or interacting with an innovative technology is to just ask yourself a few questions before you get started, before you sit down, before you plug in, and make sure that it's something that you'd be comfortable with doing in the future.
I want to build on that. It's actually a way that when I first went into industry and being first exposed to new tools like Kubernetes or whatever, throw out whatever name you want, things feel pretty magical from the outside. Like, oh, they're doing all this crazy stuff on the inside, similar to these AI models. But when you really dive in, I think really you've got this opportunity in front of you that we didn't have, or I didn't have. Like, AI wasn't as big. It was still too early, but now it's very clear that it's probably not going away anytime in the near future. So you have an opportunity to be experts in that, or at least probably better, more of an expert than I am, just by doing deeper research. It's so prevalent, and it's not going away. You've got a ripe opportunity in front of you, all of you.
If Glenn and I are shaking our heads when we hear Colton say things like, I didn't have these tools, and knowing that Google was founded in what, 2001, Glenn, is that about right?
Don't.
So you and I didn't even have that tool available. It's one thing to note, and I'm moderating, I'm trying not to have an opinion, but it's one thing to note that AI has elicited a legal response that I have never seen from a technical innovation. Nobody really cared if we were putting containers in Kubernetes, but every legal department that I've ever worked with in the last 3 years has been all over AI as far as what does this mean from a data security perspective, from a legal perspective, from every bit of it. So it is, to Rachel's point, some tools you have to be careful if you're going to put that genie or let that genie out of the bottle, right? Because it's really hard to put it back in. So.
I think there was a quote from Sam Altman, and it was to summarize it up is like, just do it and we'll figure it out with the lawyers later, right? Because they knew they were on to something big, and in that realm, stopping to ask for permission will create an adverse result. So better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And in a way, in that area, he's right. And that's the truth with a lot of the things that have made it big. Not everything, but a lot. So it doesn't surprise me, but it's interesting to watch. I'm glad I can sit here with my popcorn every once in a while, get a front row seat.
Yeah, I don't have that much. We don't use it quite as much right now, so it is interesting to be able to sit back and watch it flourish or flounder depending on the day. So we'll shift gears a little bit. I don't want to. We don't have to be a 45-minute panel on AI, but Rachel, Patrick, Glenn, you're joining us remotely. I've worked remotely for 15 years. It comes with its own challenges. So how do you maintain a work-life balance, especially in roles where you can work 17, 18 hours a day from your house and not think twice about it?
What was that last word? Work what balance? There's another one.
Like that thing you're not supposed, like work and life, like,
Oh.
I don't know, see a movie. I don't know what you do in your off time. Glenn's like, I have no work-life balance. That's so Glenn,
I told you who I work for. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
that's
no.
Yes, yes. I would tell you to go talk to HR, but I don't think they're going to care.
No, so in all seriousness, a lot of it is self-imposed because there are opportunities. Okay, to be clear, we're all at different stages in our careers, and to be blunt, I'm close to the end of mine, right? Like, there is never going to be, as a principal architect at one of the largest companies in the world, there's not another place for me to go unless I want to found my own company. And I've seen what that's not for me. I have a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit, not a lot, right? I'll do something new at an organization, but founding a new organization, that has details I don't want to deal with. And so this is it for me, right? And I am getting the experiences. I get to work with Fortune 100 companies. I get to solve problems using AI, Kubernetes for people that you have heard of, right? And it's my last hurrah, so I'm throwing myself into it. And along the way, when I was younger, I could do it with abandon, just to learn things because I had the time and the energy. And now I'm doing it just because, I'm at the last stages of what I'm going to do in my career. After this, I'll probably do something in an advisory role, right? Not that I'm going to stop working, but, this pace will not sustain forever. I'm 48 years old right now. I cannot pull 5 all-nighters in a row and then go out and party all weekend anymore. The 90s was a heck of a decade. Anyway, and yeah, that's why. It's because I am following my passion. Now, I do have a family, a wife and 2 kids, and somehow I am able to keep some semblance of balance with that. And one of the ways I've been able to do that is to force myself out into the world. Listen when people tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, you've been at this for too long. Maybe it's time to take a break. Force schedule things. Like in 4 or 5 hours, I'm taking my youngest son on Boy Scout camping. And there's not going to be much internet out there, so I'm not going to be typing all weekend, right? And so making sure to leave time for things other than work and making it a conscious effort, that's the best that you're going to get at that, in those 2 stages of your life. In between, it might be a little bit easier, right? The other flip side is at the last part of my career, this is also when I have the most experience and those skill sets are most in demand too, right? People know they know it's the experience quantity and they want that. So you also have to be choosy and relentlessly prioritize what you're doing at work and then making sure you're leaving enough time for home. And it's not easy, and there's no good instruction book for it. And there are complications like what your significant other thinks, and processing all of that is really difficult. But if you talk to people, if you have a good friend network, both at school and at school, at work, and in extracurricular activities, you can head some of that off, and listen to the people. Surround yourself with good people and listen to them, and they'll help keep you on the right track for keeping that balance.
Ooh, Rachel dropped in. I actually want to build on that because, Glenn, you hit on some really good points. One thing that you said really triggered something that I've been living by more as I'm starting to mature more in my career. I think there are points for when you're early in your career to aggressively say yes. I don't know where I first heard this, but like say yes more often than no, get exposure to things. And this kind of goes back to the general list versus like diving deep. And then there are points where you start to say no more often. And then there's probably later in your career where you have to say no, or if you get the opportunity to say no, you're probably saying no more often than yes to things, and being selfish with your time. And I think that's something that I've done in my career, is being extremely selfish with my time. That doesn't mean outside of work you can't learn or do things. It's ultimately a job. They don't care about you no matter where you work and no matter how much you think they care about you. They don't. So always keep that in the back of your mind. That doesn't mean that you have to hate working. You definitely shouldn't hate working. I love where I work. But you should always keep that seed in the back of your mind. Yeah, really, it's learning that drives me, and I tend to learn too much outside of work. And like Glenn, it's my significant other who's like, yeah, let's go do something else. You need to get away from the laptop. And actually having animals has helped a lot, like taking them out and playing with them. My senior, I guess it's my like grand boss, always says it's a marathon, not a sprint. And she also says there are times for sprinting and times for resting. So you don't need to be going 110 miles an hour all of the time. I think there are times for backing off. So don't sprint when you're supposed to be resting.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that, Colton, about the jobs and the role they have in your life. I was like, I don't want to be the one to say this. But I think something to keep in mind with the work-life balance stuff is, at least in like my specific experience, I spent a lot of time sort of at school focusing like really, really on school. And just given sort of my circumstances and my background, and I've spoken to other people while I was at school who have all been in similar situations and kept in touch with them afterwards, is to sort of really like what Colton said about it's a marathon, not a sprint. I think it's applicable like even when you are in college and like immediately right after. Like as soon as I graduated, I went into a very like time-consuming econ job where, you know, me and my class of analysts who were routinely working, you know, 60 to 80 hours a week, and just like living in the office, and the environment that I was in and everything that I was hearing at that time was like, you know, this is your time to grind, this is your time to like do everything. Like you're young, you just got out of school, like, and it wasn't until I left and I sort of realized how much that kind of pace, and I didn't even do it for too long. Like I left after 2 years. Some of my friends are, you know, still there, still doing the same thing. It really does, I think, take its toll. So just even understanding, yeah, that like it's not something to think about like way down the line. I think it's something that you need to be having at the forefront, like right at the start.
Yeah, I really like I like what's been said so far. I think one of the most important things to ask yourself when you start your career is, what do I value? And for me, asking that to myself is, I value learning a lot. And I think it's Andrew Carnegie who said to spend the first 30 years of your life learning. And that might seem daunting for the phases that you're all currently in. And you may hear that and think, oh, well, I'm presently learning, I still have to keep going. And the answer is yes, for sure. And for me, the way that I learn best is by talking with other people. I was very fortunate enough to have many virtual coffee chats with a lot of Allegheny alumni who asked me important questions about breaking into the industry and what I wanted my job to look like. So that helped me learn what I wanted to see in myself. But one of the other things that I continue to do in this space is talk with subject matter experts, both in my firm and outside of my firm, to understand how they see our industry shaping up. So that's one thing that's important to me, is to continue to learn. But another thing that's important to me is to leave things in a better state than I found them in. And so sometimes, yes, that might mean staying a few extra hours in the office to leave a document in a better state than I found it in for the next morning, and that might help me. But those are choices that I individually make each day. And yes, sometimes they add up, right? If you do it continually. But to the points that have been made earlier, you need to find things that humanize you. You need to find the things that you do outside of the hours, the working hours, or out on the weekends that make you happy, and continue to do those things early on, because nobody's going to tell you to go home after 5:30. You need to make that choice for yourself.
I want to flip it a little bit and say that you can't also have some goal but not put in the work. If you want to achieve something or have something in mind, you can't. You're probably going to have to work for it. At least if you're setting goals that feel unachievable or something that you're going to have to work for, I think your goals should be leading you. It should feel like you have to put work in. If you're not doing that, I mean, that's a choice. If maybe your goals are somewhere else in life, that's fine. That's an individual choice. But if there's something in your career, set those goals, put in the work. That's the only way you're going to get it. Maybe some people get lucky. Very small, slim chance. I wouldn't rely on that. But, yeah.
I just want to make one comment that related to what Rachel said. It would be silly to tell you to go home. You're already working from home, Rachel. I mean, why would they tell you to go where you already are?
I usually am in office 5 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I found working from home to be better work-life balance. When I was in the office, I always felt like I always wanted to be the first person in the office because it was quiet and I could get the most done. So I was always there early. But but then it's so hard to leave, being the first person to leave, even if you were there, because nobody knew that you were there first. So I
Peer
had
pressure.
yeah. So I was always the first person there by like an hour, and then I would leave with the largest group of people. So I think work-life balance from home, you can work at the pace that feels good for you. Yeah, I don't know. I have strong opinions, but I think there are good and bad to both, and I think you can find what works for you and for the company.
I will say, and Rachel, I laughed at the Carnegie quote only because did they teach you that like the first day you got there? And do they expect you to be?
Maybe.
And do they expect you to be at Carnegie Mellon for like the first 30 years? Because that's really expensive. But I laughed at that because Glenn, you and I are the only ones on this call who can say that 30 years isn't enough.
Well, you are right.
You will in this industry. You cannot stop learning. There's not a day that I don't learn something new. There is not a day that I don't have to figure something else out. It is. I mess with my sister, who is a calculus and algebra teacher at high school. I said, your calculus has not changed in a couple hundred years. I was like, your lesson plans don't change, but every day, every week, every month, we have something new to learn. So it's, in this industry, it is a challenge that you will face as you come up, right? So just keep that in mind as you start to go, through the work-life balance piece. My wife yells at me because I'm on the computer all the time, but I have hobbies that are also on the computer, and so there are things that like I do on the computer that don't involve programming. I was speaking to someone. I bought a 3D printer a couple months ago, and my wife's comment was, "That poor machine never stops." That's what she told me. She's like, I was like, "It's just a machine. It's fine. It's okay." But it's you have to have some passion, some hobbies outside, whether they're Boy Scouts or my kids play soccer. I actually play soccer, oddly enough, but something outside, right, to kind of alleviate that sort of need to be fully engaged all the time. So I wanted to leave some time for questions, but I do want to throw one last little question to the panel. And I don't know, if you were a student today, what would you focus on, both academically and extracurricular activities?
Mine ties into what we were just talking about, which is learning how to learn. I don't think I realized it while I was a student because I was so caught up in the grades and the actual project. I wasn't like zooming out a little bit and reflecting on the process itself of learning, and really like taking notes and stuff. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I don't know, just trying to build that muscle of learning and reflecting. I don't think I reflected at all as a student. I was so deep down. So it's not like a specific thing that you should study. Although I did allude to it earlier, I don't think AI is going away in the near future. So if I were in your position today, I would probably not just use AI. I don't think using AI is going to get you, other than like speeding your processes up. I would strongly suggest understanding how these large language models work. Maybe try to build your own. Yeah, what was that? Extracurricular activities?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely find something. I know when I was in college, I didn't really have, I commuted, so you may not know, I'm from this area. I wanted to save some money. I wasn't going to pay whatever you pay to live in the dorm when I lived 2 miles away, so I wanted to leave scotch-free. So I didn't have curriculars in school. I wish I would have picked up the hobby of running while I was a student. I think it's a great hobby to just clear your mind. Yeah, definitely find something that pushes you outside of your career path.
So this is really difficult for me because I'm so far removed. Like literally the world is different from the 90s as it is today in so many ways. And weighing what students have to contend with the way reality is and mixing that into academics is not something that I'm really going to have a good gauge of. But one of the constants that I do believe to be the case is finding something that interests you and thread that in with your learning, and allow that to make you a better student. Because I mean, if you whip open a textbook or download or load it up onto your iPad or whatever, a textbook, and you just start flipping through it, it's pretty boring. But if you have some sort of goal or focus, then it becomes interesting. That's the only advice really that I can give.
I guess in kind of stark contrast, because I was only a student 5 months ago. I graduated from CMU in May. I think the one thing that I really enjoyed in being a student was all of the extracurriculars I was involved in. And if I could reflect on that and say what was most important to me, there were a few things. To some of Colton's earlier points, right? Finding something that takes your mind almost completely off of school or internships or whatever it is that you're doing, whether that's running or being creative or being in the symphony, all of those kind of things are really good to just get your mind off of it. But then other things that help you learn or develop a skill set that you might not know. I am an advocate for like Model UN, debate, student government, all of those things that help you become a good leader and learn things about yourself and what's important to you going forward. I think those are good. And I think the number one thing I really want to reinforce is if I could go back 5 months, I would really focus on learning how to learn. And the number one question is, how do I do that? Right. And I think we can borrow from software engineering a little bit. And at the end of each semester, do a personal retrospective, do a personal postmortem, right? What did I learn? How do I know that I learned that? Or how do I know that I know it? Is it because I wrote it in my notebook and kept continuing to write it? Is it because I tried to code something and I kept getting 100 errors and had to learn how to problem solve? How do I know that I know this thing? And how can I repeat that process? Those are really important questions being a student.
For me, I think I don't know. There's a lot in every individual person's sort of life that will, I think, influence how you approach your time at school. For me, I didn't really spend a lot of time on extracurriculars. After I sort of treated school kind of like a job, where sort of as soon as 8 p.m. hit, I was like, all right, if I didn't get it done, I'll do it tomorrow, and if that fails, then like that's on me. So like Friday, as soon as my classes would end, I'm just like, I'm hanging out with my friends, I'm decompressing, and that was a system that worked for me. But I know that other people, like a lot of my friends, that didn't really work for them. But one thing that I think a lot of me and because I still keep in touch with a lot of the people I went to college with, we had all wished we had done was sort of engage with everything that we learned like much more deeply and past the stage that we did it sort of in our assignments. And for me specifically, what I wish I would have done is, as I'm learning things sort of in econ and in CS, I really wish I had applied sort of what I learned as I was learning it to things that really mattered to me, and things I cared about. Like one of my classmates in CS sort of had like a running project the entire time we were there. And every time like we would learn something, he'd make it better and he'd figure out a way to work it in. And when we graduated, I was like, I should have been doing that the entire time, because like that really starts to cement it into you, versus, like if you're just sort of doing it for the class or for the test, you're really not gonna. I'm not sure how effective that is in like making sure that you remember like red black trees like when you graduate or whatever.
You just helped answer one of my personal problems. I think I'm going to take that, because it's something that I didn't realize that I do until you just said that, which is my side projects today. They're just kind of like, I can move at my own pace, and they're just kind of long running. And it's often the side project. It's usually I'm learning something on the side very slowly, And then it's weird, like a few months later at work, we'll need something, and it's like, oh, I already solved that problem in my own time. And then you can kind of like steal it. And at the same time, it goes back to like being selfish, where it's like, working on those side projects is arguably sometimes more important than the same amount of hours that you could be putting into work, especially if you're learning the things that you're going to take to work. So yeah, having long-running side projects, I like that. The other thing I wanted to say, because we've talked about learning to learn, was there have been points in my career where I've tried to cheat learning. And by that, I mean trying to set these goals or things that I wanted to learn that were just so far, like I was trying to skip levels or skip points. I was like, oh, I want to write this really hard piece of code or whatever in some language and something, but I was trying to skip all of the little tiny steps that I had to go through first to get there. So don't set your like goals or things that you're trying to learn so far out that you get demotivated because you can't just get right there. I think I've fought that numerous times in my career where I've tried to set something so far out and I gave up on it because, and at the time I didn't realize that it was just, I was trying to skip too many steps.
Rachel, I can't believe you brought up a sprint retro. But actually, I laugh. I just had our performance review cycle is, our fiscal year is weird, and our performance review cycle just happened. And one of the things that my company does is something called start, stop, and continue. So as you look back on what you're doing, right, through a semester, through a year, what should I start doing? What should I stop doing? And what should I continue doing? So you answer those questions every couple of months. You know, you keep yourself on track, and you give yourself that opportunity to, like, maybe you go off the rails for a couple months and you don't do this one thing. Well, all right, I'm going to go back to that. I should start that again. So I think keeping that in mind, because it is, you know, we mentioned it's a marathon, not a sprint, and you have to have that time. So I want to be respectful of our panelists' time. Glenn, Rachel, Patrick, we have about 4 minutes left. Do you guys have a hard stop? Glenn, do you have a hard stop? Rachel, you have a hard stop?
I have a hard stop.
Okay, so I'll open up the floor real quickly, but you know, whenever you all have to drop, please feel free to do so. And I want to thank you, all three of you, and Colton here for joining us today, and you know, being a part of the panel here. But I will open up to the floor for questions. So just as you need to, let me know. Just drop, and we'll see you guys go. Oh yeah, we got past the mic around. So
You have to click it on.
I thought you were gonna walk around with it.
Oh, am I the mic?
Yeah, you're gonna walk around with it. You got him by the mic person now.
My question's for Rachel. I'm a freshman, and I'm also interested in the 3-2 program at Carnegie Mellon. So I was kind of wondering what your experience was like there, and how your experience at Allegheny prepared you, and was there anything, like any courses here that you thought were really helpful when you were doing your master's?
Yeah, I really enjoyed my 3-2 program. I think there are a lot of ways that Allegheny prepared me, and a lot of like good educational moments that helped me pursue a professional master's program. So I think some of the things that you need to ask yourself first are, what do I want to do with this degree? How might it influence my career? And what is the difference between a professional master's and a research master's? Because those are two very different programs. And when I applied to the CMU 3-2 program, it's mostly focused on a professional master's. So that's why my degree title is Information Security Policy and Management, because there's a professional element to developing you as a leader to become a manager. But in terms of education, I took all of the required classes for the computer science major, absent of one, before I left and went to CMU. So those obviously all provided a solid technical foundation before getting to Carnegie Mellon to do the information security program. But CMU and Hines College in general are very understanding, and they accept a lot of people who come to the school with different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds. And so you don't need to have a strong technical background in order to be successful. So what I would say is, take the time to complete the requirements for your major before you leave, but spend the time focusing on other ways that you want to intersect and pull a thread through your computer science education, whether that's in economics or whether that's in art. You should try to find something that blends those two things together. I also just really think it was really foundational for helping me pivot into cyber and information security, which is where I knew I wanted to be.
Other questions?
I like how
Colton has
excited Colton looks.
He has to run all the way to the back of the room. He's like,
He's like
Hi.
showing off his run club.
Hi, my question's for everybody. Do you have any advice for like a senior going and like graduating and going into the workforce? Just any kind of advice.
So sometimes, sometimes what you're going to learn as you throw yourself into the workforce is what you don't like. Listen to that lesson and change quickly.
Yeah, no, definitely that's exactly what I did. I changed sort of as soon as I figured out that it wasn't something that I wanted.
Was it an
and then-
easy decision?
No, it took me a year. It took me so long and like a lot of waffling to figure out where I wanted to go and even if I wanted to leave. Especially sort of right out of school, that first job, like everything, like there's a lot going on. So I think definitely expect like a lot of change and everything. But in terms of the workforce itself, one of the very first things they told me at my first job was like, there are people who are like very, very technically sound and can figure out a lot of problems, but at where I work specifically, the thing that really made the biggest impact was like how it was working with them. Because if somebody has really good technical skills, but they make your life way harder in a lot of other aspects of the job, because I think depending on your role, like at least where I was, like there were other things we were doing besides just like technical stuff. And if someone makes all of that really, really difficult, a lot of people will know and then sort of have a preference against working with them.
Yeah, my story for this, I feel like I've told it probably last year if people were here. The first job is definitely the hardest one. I think it's kind of luck, really. But once you're there, I think that's when you have the opportunity to start being selfish. I think you need to realize what you enjoy, what you want. Like you need to have a vision of your career. Like what's the next step? And then make sure that you're crafting your current role and finding those opportunities so that you can get to your next step. Have that next step vision. At StockX, I knew for a while that I wanted to leave because it was just, I wasn't that happy. Actually, before I left, I was crafting a role to shift teams to more infrastructure things. And it turned out that I ended up just taking all the things that I had learned trying to craft that position change to being a complete company change. So I would just say, always think about the path that you're on. The first job, maybe it's not like maybe you're not going to Amazon as your first job. You may be skipping too many stones there. Find a path though, if you want to go to say Amazon, I don't know, I've never been there, but like find the path that maybe gets you in there. So yeah, always be following some vision and taking those little steps.
I just want to harp on something you said. Don't just flip the table and walk out if doesn't meet your expectations. That was critical. You said you were planning and crafting your next step. That is very important. That patience is going to allow you to land well and get to where you want to go.
Yeah, I think the advice I would give is advice that was given to me, which was ask yourself how many hours a day you want to spend coding versus how many in meetings and how many writing emails or writing documents. And if your answer to the first question is, I don't want to write a lot of code, that's okay. And you will be able to find something that doesn't require you to write a lot of code each and every day. The nice thing about the way that our industry is headed is that it's becoming a little more specialized, that you don't have to be an engineer in every facet of the word, in order to be successful, you can have the combination of skills and still continue to be successful. So yeah, the question I would ask myself, or the advice I would give, is to determine how many hours a day you want to spend doing different things. And that might help you figure out which specialization you want to be in.
Are you picking?
No, you're picking.
Oh.
I'm not. I'm just moderating. Any other questions? Anybody else? All right. Well, panelists, I know we're over anyway, but thank you again for your time. I appreciate everything, and I'll be in touch with all three of you actually after this. I'll send you a quick email. But thank you again for your time.
No. I want to say thanks to the students for coming, and I think some people at the school, be it yourself, Matt, or other professors, have my email and LinkedIn, and I'm more than willing to connect and speak to students more than just in this forum.
Oh, for sure. We'll, I
Yep.
mean, part of Rachel, what I think we're talking about with the tab too, so with the technical advisory board and actually Colton is our student engagement chair. So we are going to step that up a little bit. So Rachel, Colton definitely has your email and he will be in touch and we'll coordinate from there.
That's good. Thanks everyone. Enjoy
Thanks,
the weekend.
Rachel. Thanks, Patrick.
Yep. Yeah. Same to me. Feel free to reach out. Thank you for hosting us and the students for coming.
Of course. Thank you.